everybody. Welcome into an episode of the Orange Zone Overtime. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston. We have Rachel Culver on the producer mic. This is a Syracuse sports podcast and beyond, and today we're coming to you with an overtime episode to discuss Kiyan Anthony, the son of Orange legend Carmelo Anthony, who will be making his upcoming decision this Friday on where he wants to go to school. The announcement is going to be on Carmelo's podcast called 7 p.m. in Brooklyn. At this point, he will be choosing between just Syracuse and USC. How are we feeling?
Yes. First of all, I think we should state the obvious. I could be blatantly wrong and play this clip back on Friday after he announces, but you're telling me that Kiyan Anthony is going on his father, Syracuse legend Carmelo Anthony's podcast and committing to USC? Possible, but the Jimmy Fallon appearance, also a New York show, and Carmelo being so proud of that, I think Kiyan Anthony is going to pick Syracuse.
That's honestly interesting because I will say, so at first, Kiyan Anthony, within the past few weeks, says that it is down to 3 schools, Syracuse, USC, and Auburn. But then his father goes on the Jimmy Fallon show and only says 2. I'm going to say this just once because I've been thinking about it a lot. Do you think that he accidentally just left Auburn out or forgot and it was still supposed to be 3 up until the actual announcement?
Maybe Mello had a little
I feel like he might have had a slip. And I'm going to say one other thing. He said Syracuse and USC, not USC and Syracuse. That's just me reading into it. But I just like to put on my investigative cap when I go on social media sometimes. Thought that was all really interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now, listen, it's down to 2. You want to talk about a storyline ending and the new chapter of the book? It feels like Syracuse is the right place. However, Carmelo also said on his show with Jimmy Fallon that he wants his son to be able to forge his own path and really do what he thought was right for him. And I appreciate and respect that. Anthony is a 6'5" shooting guard. And he is in the class of 2025. He's number 30 overall recruit in the 2025 class, and he is, I believe, the number 1 ranked prospect in the state of New York. I'll check that while you continue to talk, though.
Yeah.
It's a big-time deal.
Right. He's a 24/7 Sports has him as a 4-star. 24/7 has him as the number 32 overall recruit, number 6 shooting guard, and number 1 player from New York, like you said. Okay. ESPN Top 100 has him as number 36. So wherever he's in that 30 to 40 range across all of the national sites. I think you can't overstate how much of a big get it would be for ADRIAN and his staff. Obviously from a legacy standpoint, Carmelo still comes back to Syracuse all the time, just that connection. B, from a on the basketball court standpoint, you got Sadiq White, the ESPN number 20 prospect in that class. Then if you have Kiyan join him, you obviously have Donnie Freeman and Elijah Moore and some exciting young freshmen this year. I think we could be really looking at, if Kiyan commits, even if he doesn't commit, but especially if Kiyan commits, I guess the new era or the new ADRIAN Autry version of Syracuse basketball. And I think in an era where Syracuse basketball has not gone to the tournament in quite a few years by Syracuse standards, to see this recruiting momentum, I think, is a positive sign.
Listen, it would be a really big fish for ADRIAN Autry. Yeah. And in the era of NIL, and you want to talk about a program that has fallen off a little and really wants to revitalize, this is a way to get people here.
Yeah.
And it could, whether how good he is in his first year or not, and maybe that's where falling in his dad's shadow, I could see why that almost might be a frustrating thing, but you want to even talk about jersey sales. You want to talk about people who are just casual basketball fans who want to come out and see him play. It's one of those things you're going to want to see in action, you're going to want to bear witness to and see in person. And I think having him here and having that name, all of a sudden now, there's a lot more talk and chatter around the program. It really elevates and brings Syracuse to a new level.
Yeah, I also think that if you're ADRIAN Autry, he's a guy, you got to have him. I mean, you have the inside, quite literally, Carmelo Anthony. I'm sure that he's known that family for a long, long time. You got to have Kiyan Anthony from a recruiting standpoint. To me, this might be controversial, it's almost more impressive to go out and get a guy like Sadiq White, who you really have no connection to. That's an ESPN top 20 guy. From a recruiting standpoint, you have the inside on Kiyan. Gotta have him.
Let's just say it. The only way that you don't end up with Anthony in this situation is because he truly wanted to forge his own path and actively did not want to follow in his father's footsteps. Because what other reason would there be?
Well, I know people will say NIL, but you're not. Someone at Syracuse is ponying up the money for Kiyan Anthony. I know it. It's not. If he does not pick Syracuse, I would have a hard time believing that it's NIL.
They will find a way.
They'll find the money
for him. Please. So I don't think I want to hear that, honestly. That feels like noise to me.
Yeah.
But I really would. I would understand it if you're coming from, and your father is a man who has such a legacy here. I guess it would make sense to me if you wouldn't want to follow in his footsteps. But beyond that, I'm really feeling like there is no reason why you would not want to be at Syracuse.
Well, your father has real big shoes to live up to. I mean, he brought the only national championship here that's ever occurred in basketball in 2003, and then obviously moved on to the NBA after that and had a lengthy, long, legendary NBA career as well. So I see the perspective very much as someone who had to choose to follow in their parents' footsteps in a much smaller note of like going to Syracuse or not. Yeah, that's a hard one to follow up, the national championship and all that, but does Kiyan Anthony seem like, I mean, I don't know if he's going to bring a national championship to Syracuse, but he seems like a kid that could certainly, like I was saying, I guess usher in the new ADRIAN Autry era, the new youthful era of this program.
And you know what? Who are we to say? My dad's not Carmelo Anthony, man. Listen, maybe you want to come here and you want to build upon that legacy, and you want to bleed orange, and you want to continue to pass that tradition down. That's a cool story in and of itself, too.
Yeah.
But again, very tough decisions to be making when you were born in 2007.
When you're 17 years old.
That's a lot of pressure. What do you think, Rachel?
I got a few things. I think, one, I want to take the conversation back to ADRIAN Autry a little bit. Obviously, we're in the start of his second season now. He has a lot to prove this season. I think people were very disappointed not getting a trip to the NCAA tournament last year, and I think there is going to be a lot of frustration if we, again, see something similar play out, if we don't get to the NCAA tournament this year. However, that being said, even if we don't get to the NCAA tournament this year and he gets Carmelo Anthony's son, I think that, like, secures his job a little bit. Not that I think his job's in jeopardy or any of that thing, but I think it solidifies his place as the guy for Syracuse for years to come.
Forget about Anthony. This is pressure on Autry,
yes,
man.
It is.
You got to lock this down.
Well, yes, to Rachel's, but that's what I'm saying. If you're ADRIAN Autry, you got to have him, from a, like, safety net standpoint, like you're pointing out, right? It gives you a little bit of, even if you don't have the year you want this year, all right, well, there's significant hope for the future. But B, you just had the inside. You had the leg up on every other school. So I think recruiting-wise, you got to prove something, too.
You were the Yankees with Soto.
You were the Yankees with Soto.
No, we'll have to just see what happens. But listen, it is a decision that ultimately is up to him. I think just to zoom out even further for a minute, when Rachel talked about, you know, the standard and bringing the standard back to Syracuse and how people were disappointed last year, like, good, people should have been disappointed last year because it was disappointing.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay. Like, the orange standard is the orange standard for a reason. I don't think it's just with basketball. You're seeing it in football now, too. People want to see a return to greatness. There was certain times throughout the course of each of these programs where greatness could be felt. And that time for both of those programs is not right now.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's pressure. But on the other hand, you're not coming into a program, if you're Kiyan Anthony, that is already at the top and you need to continue to stay at the top. Like, there's room to grow here. And maybe that takes the pressure off a little bit.
Yeah, I think from a Syracuse basketball overarching perspective, right? Last year, all right, I see why people are disappointed. Syracuse basketball does not miss the tournament 3 years in a row. That's just not what happens up here, but it is what happened, and that's the reality of the situation. However, ADRIAN Autry, in his first year as a head coach, to immediately say it's NCAA tournament or bust is a little crazy. Now, I understand why that is, obviously, but he did win 20 games last year. I think there were good signs last year. He won 20 games last year with maybe not the team that is, I mean, we'll see this year. I'm not going to comment on this year's team yet because we've seen one game, but maybe not the level of depth that he even has this year. So we'll see what happens. With all that being said, I really do think that this year in his second season, I think the mulligan is gone. The free pass is gone. Coaches in a lot of realms have a free pass their first year. I'm saying it right now. We shouldn't have missed the tournament 3 years in a row, but ADRIAN Autry gets a free pass in his first year. His second year, I don't think that's the case. I quite literally am concerned for ADRIAN Autry's safety in this town if Syracuse does not make the tournament this year. Like, genuinely.
I agree with that. And just speaking on, like, his game, like, what Syracuse has been missing, what it feels like for years now, is that one guy, that one flashy guy, that one guy that you can count on to make the clutch play. Everything about his game makes it seem like he's that guy. He's going to shoot over guys when he's harshly defended. He actually prefers to shoot over guys when he's harshly defended. He doesn't want the open shot. He looks for the contact. He's much like his dad in that way. So having somebody like that, I think, it has the potential to bring back like almost that Syracuse flair that has been missing for years.
And Donnie Freeman, I would like to point out, could be that guy this year,
Yes.
right? We saw him have a double-double in his first game as a freshman against Lemoyne. Very impressive. But Donnie Freeman, the reality of that situation is he might go to the NBA after 1 year, maybe 2. So do Donnie Freeman and Kiyan Anthony even share the court? Possibly not.
Oh, dude, that kills me. I know it's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
But how hard it must be to freaking build when all of the great guys go to the NBA after like 1 freaking year. It must be tough. Anyway, all that to say, someone needs to bring the juice back to the damn orange. Who's it going to be? We're going to find out when we find out. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be here once that announcement is made. So look for that episode dropping after Kiyan Anthony decides where he is spending the next however many years. Thanks for joining us.